I wanted to draw your attention to an interesting book that one of my viewers advised me to purchase. Here it is. It's available online at the big major online retail book place that does other things as well. And it's called the Common Law Community Training Manual. Common law. It's fascinating because this is all about the trial by jury and how ordinary people, us, the people, can bring together a court and put on trial those that have oppressed us, heads of state, people who have perhaps mandated certain medical things that have caused death and complications. And I just wanted to sort of explore some of this with you and tell you about it, because you may want to go and have a look at this book, because it's going to be, I think, a very useful tool in the freedom movement. So excuse me just reading a few sections out of this. So the Common Law Community Training Manual. It says here, the purpose of a common law court. Many people are plagued by the injustices of courts, police, school, banks, social services and the NHS. As citizens of a common law-based judicial system, we have the right to come together in our local communities and convene a common law court in full lawful legitimacy. We have the right. This is not the government's acts and statutes and the legalese and the bar guild. This is the people coming together. We are capable of judging and sentencing any person, business or organisation fairly, regardless of the status they hold in society. A court convened randomly by the people can be trusted to judge fairly with no ulterior motives. Our sentences are enforced by local community members acting as peace officers who are sworn agents of the court, directed by our court appointed sheriff. Now this is fantastic, and a lot of people will be thinking, hang on a minute, how can this be when you've got these official courts? They're not going to hold to that. But this is where this very slim volume sort of starts to tell us all about all of this. But I just wanted to read a few little bits here. What is assembling, it says at the beginning, is the first court in history to bring judgment against the Vatican and the Crown of England as institutions. But our court also signals the dawn of a new notion of justice, one defined by the people themselves, and especially by the historic victims of church and state, to bring about not only a judgment on their prosecutors, but a new political and spiritual arrangement to undo the systems responsible for intergenerational crimes against humanity. And this has been issued from the founding charter of the International Common Law Court of Justice in September the 1st, 2012. So, as an introduction, it says here that history was made on February the 11th, 2013, when the first Catholic Pope in history resigned from his office during peacetime in order to avoid arrest for protecting and aiding child rapist priests. Barely 2 weeks later, Pope Benedict Joseph Ratzinger was found guilty by the International Common Law Court of Justice for crimes against humanity, including child trafficking. And the arrest warrant that had been anticipated, the arrest warrant that he had anticipated, which had provoked his resignation, was issued against him on the 25th of February. Evading justice inside the Vatican, Ratzinger is presently an international fugitive from the law, a living example of the power of common law courts to successfully prosecute so-called heads of state, although I suppose he's evading justice by hiding in the Vatican. But anyway, the point being that it's clearly a powerful court, because he is hiding and he's not out in the public where he could be got, I guess. The lawful verdict of the International Common Law Court of Justice was a shot heard around the world and has spawned efforts in 21 countries to establish similar popular courts of justice to reclaim the law from the wealthy and their compliant governments. And this is the point. So this manual, it seems to me, and I thought you'd be interested in reading it, and I'd love to know your views on it, seems to be a powerful rebuttal, if you like, of the systems that are already out there at the moment, and something that is a lot fairer and is by the people, for the people, not a tyrannical government telling us how things should be. So here we are. It's you're part of a growing movement to create a new liberated society within the shell of the old by first allowing the law to act for all the people and not a clique of judicial specialists and their friends. That new society is emerging through every act of courage and integrity by we who know what's at stake, and that is our children and the future of our species. So this is why this is so fundamentally important. We are taking action of freeing ourselves by remembering true laws, that man is born free, yet everywhere he is in chains. And that seems to be it. We are a free people, and yet it seems that we're continually chained and penalised for living. And that can't be right. It cannot be right. So this book goes on to do that, and it talks about how the principles of natural law ought to be the thing that we live by. So here, two principles summarising natural law. All things exist and are held in common. The law does no harm to anyone. So those are the basic principles. But then it talks here about some of the basics, and really I can't go through the whole book clearly in this, but I want to just tell you a little bit more, if I may, because I think this is going to be an amazing tool. So here is a basic summary of the nature of true or common law versus arbitrary law. So natural law, natural liberty and the basis of common law courts, the first principles. Here we go. Every man, woman and child is born and by nature free, equal and sovereign, and possesses an inherent knowledge of what is true and right. So, and I think that's true. We do know inherently as a species what is true and right. The personal sovereignty is a reflection of the wider natural law, whereby all life by nature is indivisible and placed in common for the survival and happiness of all, which makes perfect sense. This natural law gives rise to customary common law, whose purpose is to protect the inherent liberties and sovereignty of men and women in a community by maintaining equity and peace among them. So I don't have any arguments at all with any of that. And it gives a whole load more. Historically, common law arose in England after the 11th century Norman conquest as a bulwark in defence of the people against the arbitrary rule of self-appointed elites, especially monarchs and popes. And that's a fascinating thing. You know, the monarchs and popes, and then the Vatican and Roman law that seems to be governing our bar guild law courts that we have, has been there for thousands of years, and yet we the people should be the ones that are making the rules by trial by jury, in which, of course, you're not only trying the person who is up there, but also the law, to see if the law is worthy and necessary. Because if it isn't, why have we got it? I think that's absolutely fantastic. Such a conquest-based rule of papal and kingly elites gave rise to a legal system known as civil or Roman law, and the belief that men and women are not endowed with the capacity for self-rule and wisdom. Well, I think we can all agree that we do have that capacity to self-rule, and we have plenty of wisdom. And it goes on, and that's really fascinating. And then, of course, it talks about how you establish and maintain common law courts, tells you how you appoint a jury and the responsibilities of the jury, how you that there is a legal procedure and court protocol, and how you would then, in certain steps, compile the case, seek the remedy of a common law court, filing a notice and a claim of right, forming a common law court, swearing in and convening the jury and court officers, and all of that, the whole stuff, which I think is very interesting. And then, of course, when you come to the end and you've come to a point where the jury, who are, of course, the judge, not the judge, he's just the convener, the jury who's the judge, then you need to come to the sentence, and you need to enforce it. And here it says enforcement. The big and thorny issue, of course, is whether men and women can come to a court verdict, but rather how their decision can be enforced and effective in the community. This is especially an issue when the verdict is imposed against the heads of church or state or even entire institutions, such as in February 25th, 2013, when the verdict of the International Common Law Court of Justice concerned genocide in Canada. And there's a website, and I'll post a link to the website as well, where you can find out. To use that case as an example, it says the moral weight of the verdict was clearly the strongest weapon in the arsenal of the court and created the conditions for the enforcement of the verdict against the 30 officials of church and state named in the indictment. And it goes on. And the thing about all of this is it needs people to recognise it as a proper thing, not just a few people who are then trying to enforce what is true and right and justice, as the people who live in and on this planet want to achieve, not what the government and the tyrannical diktats want from us and want to penalise us all the way. So I just thought it would be interesting to bring this to the attention of my viewers. You may find this interesting because I genuinely think that there is a righting of the boat. We've been upside down for a long time. Things haven't been right. And for the people, I think this is what an amazing time to be alive, because I think we're going to see so many interesting things go right. And the justice system, of course, is going to be one of those in which a man or a woman and a law, an unjust law, can be tried by their peers and then the verdict brought and enforced. And I think in a new society that we seem to be heading towards, as we push back against the WEF and the WHO and tyrannical governments across the world who want to enslave us, and we decide to create our own new society, I think things like this are going to be absolutely invaluable. So I'll leave a link to it, and thank you very much for watching.